Chapter 2, Part 1 of Gigolo by Edna Ferber. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Old Man Minick. His wife had always spoiled him outrageously, no doubt of that. Take, for example, the matter of the pillows merely. Old Man Minick slept high. That is, he thought he slept high. He liked 2 plump pillows on his side of the great, wide, old-fashioned cherry bed. He would sink into them with a vast grunting and sighing and puffing, expressive of nerves and muscles relaxed and gratified. But in the morning there was always 1 pillow on the floor. He had thrown it there. Always, in the morning, there it lay, its plump white cheek turned reproachfully up at him from the side of the bed. Ma Minick knew this, naturally, after 40 years of the cherry bed, but she never begrudged him that extra pillow. Each morning when she arose, she picked it up on her way to shut the window. Each morning the bed was made up with 2 pillows on his side of it, as usual. Then there was the window. Ma Minick liked it open wide. Old Man Minick, who rather prided himself on his modernism, he called it being up to date, was distrustful of the night air. In the folds of its sable mantle lurked a swarm of dread things: colds, clammy miasmas, fevers. "Night air's just like any other air," Ma Minick would say with some asperity. Ma Minick was no worm, and as modern as he. So when they went to bed the window would be wide open. They would lie there, the 2 old ones, talking comfortably about commonplace things, the kind of talk that goes on between a man and a woman who have lived together in wholesome peace, spiced with occasional wholesome bickerings, for more than 40 years. "Remind me to see Gerson tomorrow about that lock on the basement door. Papers full of burglars." "If I think of it." She never failed to. "George and Nettie haven't been over in a week now." "Oh, well, young folks. Did you stop in and pay that Koritz the 50 cents for pressing your suit?" "By golly, I forgot again. First thing in the morning." A sniff. "Just smell the yards." It was Chicago. "Wind must be from the west." Sleep came with reluctant feet, but they wooed her patiently, and presently she settled down between them and they slept lightly. Usually, some time during the night, he awoke, slid cautiously and with infinite stealth from beneath the covers, and closed the wide-flung window to within a bare 2 inches of the sill. Almost invariably she heard him, but she was a wise old woman, a philosopher of parts. She knew better than to allow a window to shatter the peace of their marital felicity. As she lay there, smiling a little grimly in the dark, and giving no sign of being awake, she thought, "Oh, well, I guess a closed window won't kill me either." Still, sometimes, just to punish him a little, and to prove that she was nobody's fool, she would wait until he had dropped off to sleep again, and then she, too, would achieve a stealthy trip to the window, and would raise it, slowly, carefully, inch by inch. "How did that window come to be open?" he would say in the morning, being a poor dissembler. "Window? Why, it's just the way it was when we went to bed." and she would stoop to pick up the pillow that lay on the floor. There was little or no talk of death between this comfortable, active, sound-appearing man of almost 70 and this plump, capable woman of 66. But, as always, between husband and wife, it was understood wordlessly and without reason that old man Minick would go first. Not that either of them had the slightest intention of going. In fact, when it happened, they were planning to spend the winter in California, and perhaps live there indefinitely, if they liked it, and didn't get too lonesome for George and Nettie, and the Chicago smoke, and Chicago noise, and Chicago smells, and rush, and dirt. Still, the stolid sum paid yearly in insurance premiums showed clearly that he meant to leave her in comfort and security. Besides, the world is full of widows. Everyone sees that. But how many widowers? Few. Widows there are by the thousands, living alone, living in hotels, living with married daughters and sons-in-law, or married sons and daughters-in-law. But of widowers in a like situation there are bewilderingly few. And why this should be, no one knows. So, then, the California trip never materialized, and the year that followed never was quite clear in old man Minick's dazed mind. In the first place, it was the year in which stocks tumbled and broke their backs. Gilt-edged securities showed themselves to be tinsel. Old man Minick had retired from active business just 1 year before, meaning to live comfortably on the fruit of a half-century's toil. He now saw that fruit rotting all about him. There was in it hardly enough nourishment to sustain them. Then came the day when Ma Minick went downtown to see Matthews about that pain, right here, and came home looking shriveled, talking shrilly about nothing, and evading Pa's eyes. Followed months that were just a jumble of agony, X-rays, hope, despair, morphia, nothingness. After it was all over, "But I was going first," old man Minick said, dazedly. The old house on Ellis, near 39th, was sold for what it would bring. George, who knew Chicago real estate if anyone did, said they might as well get what they could. Things would only go lower. You'll see. And nobody's going to have any money for years. Besides, look at the neighborhood. Old man Minick said George was right. He said everybody was right. You would hardly have recognized in this shrunken figure and wattled face the spruce and dressy old man whom Ma Minick used to spoil so delightfully. You know best, George, you know best. He who used to stand up to George until Ma Minick was moved to say, "You don't know everything." After Matthew's bills, and the hospital, and the nurses, and the medicines, and the 1,001 things were paid, there was left exactly $500 a year. "You're going to make your home with us, father," George and Nettie said. Alma, too, said this would be the best. Alma, the married daughter, lived in Seattle. "Though, you know, Fred and I would be only too glad to have you." Seattle! The ends of the earth! Oh, no! No! He protested, every fibre of his old frame clinging to the accustomed. Seattle at 70! He turned piteous eyes on his son George and his daughter-in-law Nettie. "You're going to make your home with us, father," they reassured him. He clung to them gratefully. After it was over, Alma went home to her husband and their children. So now he lived with George and Nettie in the 5-room flat on South Park Avenue, just across from Washington Park, and there was no extra pillow on the floor. Nettie hadn't said he couldn't have the extra pillow. He had told her he used 2, and she had given him 2 the first week. But every morning she had found a pillow cast on the floor. "I thought you used 2 pillows, father." "I do." "But there's always one on the floor when I make the bed in the morning." "You always throw one on the floor. You only sleep on 1 pillow, really." "I use 2 pillows." But the second week there was 1 pillow. He tossed and turned a good deal there in his bedroom off the kitchen, but he got used to it in time. Not used to it exactly, but, well, the bedroom off the kitchen wasn't as menial as it sounds. It was really rather cozy. The 5-room flat held living room, front bedroom, dining room, kitchen, and maid's room. The room off the kitchen was intended as a maid's room, but Nettie had no maid. George's business had suffered with the rest. George and Nettie had said, "I wish there was a front room for you, father. You could have ours, and we'd move back there. Only this room's too small for twin beds, and the dressing table, and the chiffonier." They had meant it, or meant to mean it. "This is fine," old man Minick had said. "This is good enough for anybody." There was a narrow white enamel bed, and a tiny dresser, and a table. Nettie had made gay cretonne covers and spreads, and put a little reading lamp on the table, and arranged his things. Ma Minick's picture on the dresser, with her mouth sort of pursed to make it look small. It wasn't a recent picture. Nettie and George had had it framed for him as a surprise. They had often urged her to have the picture taken, but she had dreaded it. Old man Minick didn't think much of that photograph, though he never said so. He needed no photograph of Ma Minick. He had a dozen of them, a gallery of them, thousands of them. Lying on his 1 pillow, he could take them out and look at them one by one as they passed in review, smiling, serious, chiding, praising. There in the dark, he needed no picture on his dresser. A handsome girl, Nettie, and a good girl. He thought of her as a girl, though she was past 30. George and Nettie had married late. This was only the 3rd year of their marriage. Alma, the daughter, had married young, but George had stayed on, unwed, in the old house on Ellis until he was 36, and all Ma Minick's friends' daughters had had a try at him in vain. The old people had urged him to marry, but it had been wonderful to have him around the house just the same. Somebody young around the house. Not that George had stayed around very much, but when he was there, you knew he was there. He whistled while dressing. He sang in the bath. He roared down the stairway, "Ma, where's my clean shirts?" The telephone rang for him. Ma Minick prepared special dishes for him. The servant girl said, "Oh, now, Mr. George, look what you've done. Gone and spilled the grease all over my clean kitchen floor," and wiped it up adoringly, while George laughed and gobbled his bit of food filched from pot or frying pan. They had been a little surprised about Nettie. George was in the bond business, and she worked for the same firm. A plump, handsome, eye-glassed woman, with fine fresh coloring, a clear skin that old man Minick called appetizing, and a great coil of smooth dark hair. She wore plain tailored things, and understood the bond business in a way that might have led you to think hers a masculine mind, if she hadn't been so feminine too in her manner. Old man Minick had liked her better than Ma Minick had. Nettie had called him Pop, and joked with him, and almost flirted with him, in a daughterly sort of way. He liked to squeeze her plump arm and pinch her soft cheeks between thumb and forefinger. She would laugh up at him and pat his shoulder, and that shoulder would straighten spryly, and he would waggle his head doggishly. "Look out there, George," the others in the room would say. "Your dad'll cut you out first thing you know. You'll lose your girl, that's all." Nettie would smile. Her teeth were white and strong and even. Old man Minick would laugh and wink, immensely pleased and flattered. "We understand each other, don't we, Pop?" Nettie would say. During the first years of their married life, Nettie stayed home. She fussed happily about her little flat, gave parties, went to parties, played bridge. She seemed to love the ease, the relaxation, the small luxuries. She and George were very much in love. Before her marriage, she had lived in a boarding house on Michigan Avenue. At mention of it now, she puckered up her face. She did not attempt to conceal her fondness for these 5 rooms of hers, so neat, so quiet, so bright, so cozy. Overstuffed velvet in the living room with silk lampshades, and small tables holding books and magazines, and little boxes containing cigarettes or hard candies. Very modern. A gate-legged table in the dining room, caramel-coloured walnut in the bedroom, rich and dark and smooth. She loved it. An orderly woman, everything in its place. Before 11 o'clock the little apartment was shining, spotless. Cushions plumped, crumbs brushed, vegetables in cold water. The telephone. "Hello? Oh, hello, Bess. Oh, hours ago. Not a thing. Well, if George is willing. I'll call him up and ask him. We haven't seen a show in 2 weeks. I'll call you back within the next half hour. No, I haven't done my marketing yet. Yes, and have dinner downtown. Meet at 7. Into this orderly, smooth-running mechanism was catapulted a bewildered old man. She no longer called him Pop. He never dreamed of squeezing the plump arm or pinching the smooth cheek. She called him Father, sometimes George's father. Sometimes, when she was telephoning, there came to him, "George's father's living with us now, you know. I can't." They were very kind to him, Nettie and George. "Now just you sit right down here, Father. What do you want to go poking off into your own room for?" He remembered that in the last year Nettie had said something about going back to work. There wasn't enough to do around the house to keep her busy. She was sick of afternoon parties. Sew and eat, that's all, and gossip, or play bridge. Besides, look at the money. Business was awful. The 2 old people had resented this idea as much as George had. More, in fact, they were scandalized. Young folks nowadays, shaking their heads. Young folks nowadays, what are they thinking of? In my day, when you got married, you had babies. George and Nettie had no babies. At first Nettie had said, "I'm so happy, I just want a chance to rest. I've been working since I was 17. I just want to rest first." 1 year, 2 years, 3. And now Pa Minick. Ma Minick in the old house on Ellis Avenue had kept a loose sort of larder, not lavish but plentiful. They both ate a great deal, as old people are likely to do. Old man Minick, especially, had liked to nibble. A handful of raisins from the box on the shelf, a couple of nuts from the dish on the sideboard, a bit of candy rolled beneath the tongue. At dinner, sometimes toward the last, even at noontime, a plate of steaming soup, hot, revivifying, stimulating. Plenty of this and plenty of that. "What's the matter, Joe? You're not eating." But he was, amply. Ma Minick had liked to see him eat so much. She was wrong, of course. But at Nettie's things were different. Hers was a sufficient but stern ménage. So many mouths to feed, just so many lamb chops. Nettie knew about calories and vitamins and mysterious things like that, and talked about them. So many calories in this, so many calories in that. He never was quite clear in his mind about these things said to be lurking in his food. He had always thought of spinach as spinach, chops as chops. But to Nettie they were calories. They lunched together, these two. George was, of course, downtown. For herself, Nettie would have one of those feminine pick-up lunches, a dab of apple sauce, a cup of tea, and a slice of cold toast left from breakfast. This she would eat while old man Minick guiltily supped his cup of warmed-over broth or his coddled eggs. She always pressed upon him any bit of cold meat that was left from the night before, or any remnants of vegetable or spaghetti. Often there was quite a little fleet of saucers and sauce-plates grouped about his main plate. Into these he dipped and swooped uncomfortably, and yet with a relish. Sometimes, when he had finished, he would look about furtively. "What'll you have, father? Can I get you something?" "Nothing, Nettie, nothing. I'm doing fine." She had finished the last of her wooden toast, and was waiting for him, kindly. Still, this balanced and scientific fare seemed to agree with him. As the winter went on, he seemed actually to have regained most of his former hardiness and vigour. A handsome old boy he was, ruddy, hale, with the zest of a juicy old apple, slightly withered, but still sappy. It should be mentioned that he had a dimple in his cheek, which flashed unexpectedly when he smiled. It gave him a roguish, almost a boyish effect, most appealing to the beholder, especially the feminine beholder. Much of his spoiling at the hands of Ma Minick had doubtless been due to this mere depression of the skin. Spring was to bring a new and welcome source of enrichment into his life. But these first 6 months of his residence with George and Nettie were hard. No spoiling there. He missed being made much of. He got kindness, but he needed love. Then, too, he was rather a gabby old man. He liked to hold forth. In the old house on Ellis there had been visiting back and forth between men and women of his own age and Ma's. At these gatherings he had waxed oratorical or argumentative, and they had heard him, some in agreement, some in disagreement, but always respectfully, whether he prated of real estate, or social depravity, prohibition, or European exchange. "Let me tell you here and now, something's got to be done before you can get a country back on a sound financial basis. Why, take Russia alone. Why—" Or, "Young people nowadays. They don't know what respect means. I tell you, there's got to be a change, and there will be, and it's the older generation that's got to bring it about. What do they know of hardship? What do they know about work, real work? Most of 'em's never done a real day's work in their life. All they think of is dancing and gambling and drinking. Look at the way they dress. Look at ad libidum. That's so, the others would agree. I was saying only yesterday. Then, too, until a year or two before, he had taken active part in business. He had retired only at the urging of Ma and the children. They said he ought to rest and play and enjoy himself. Now, as his strength and good spirits gradually returned, he began to go downtown mornings. He would dress carefully, though a little shakily. He had always shaved himself, and he kept this up. All in all, during the day he occupied the bathroom literally for hours, and this annoyed Nettie to the point of frenzy, though she said nothing. He liked the white cheerfulness of the little tiled room. He puddled about in the water endlessly, snorted and splashed and puffed and snuffled and blew. He was one of those audible washers who emerge dripping, and whose ablutions are distributed impartially over ceiling, walls, and floor. Nettie, at the closed door. "Father, are you all right?" Splash! Perf! "Yes, sure, I'm all right." "Well, I didn't know. You've been in there so long." He was a neat old man, but there was likely to be a spot or so on his vest or his coat lapel or his tie. Ma used to remove these, on or off him as the occasion demanded, rubbing carefully and scolding a little, making a childish sound between tongue and teeth, indicative of great impatience of his carelessness. He had rather enjoyed these sounds, and this rubbing and scratching on the cloth with the finger-nail and a moistened rag. They indicated that someone cared about the way he looked, had pride in him, loved him. Nettie never removed spots, though infrequently she said, "Father, just leave that suit out, will you? I'll send it to the cleaners with George's. The man's coming tomorrow morning." He would look down at himself hastily, and attack a spot here and there with a futile finger-nail. His morning toilette completed, he would make for the 51st Street L. Seated in the train, he would assume an air of importance and testy haste. Glance out of the window, look at his watch. You got the impression of a handsome and well-preserved old gentleman on his way downtown to consummate a shrewd business deal. He had been familiar with Chicago's downtown for 50 years, and he could remember when State Street was a tree-shaded cottage district. The noise and rush and clangor of the Loop had long been familiar to him. But now he seemed to find the downtown trip arduous, even hazardous. The roar of the elevated trains, the hoarse hoots of the motor horns, the clang of the streetcars, the bedlam that is Chicago's downtown district, bewildered him, frightened him almost. He would skip across the street like a harried hare, just missing a motor truck's nose, and all unconscious of the stream of invective directed at him by its charioteer. "Hey, watcha! Look!" Sometimes a policeman came to his aid, or attempted to, but he resented this proffered help. "Say, look here, my lad," he would say to the tall, tired, and not at all burly Standing on one's feet directing traffic at Wabash and Madison for 8 hours a day does not make for burliness. Policeman. I've been coming downtown since long before you were born. You don't need to help me. I'm no jay from the country. He visited the stock exchange. This depressed him. Stocks were lower than ever, and still going down. His 500 a year was safe, but the rest seemed doomed for his lifetime, at least. He would drop in at George's office. George's office was pleasantly filled with dapper, neat young men and, surprisingly enough, dapper, slim young women, seated at desks in the big light-flooded room. At one corner of each desk stood a polished metal placard on a little standard, and bearing the name of the desk's occupant: Mr. Owens, Mr. Satterley, Mr. James, Miss Rauch, Mr. Minick. "Hello, father," Mr. Minick would say, looking annoyed. "What's bringing you down?" "Oh, nothing. Just had a little business to tend to over at the Exchange. Thought I'd drop in. How's business?" "Rotten." "I should think it was," old man Minick would agree. "I should think it was. George wished he wouldn't. He couldn't have it, that's all. Old man Minick would stroll over to the desk marked Satterley or Owens or James. These brisk young men would toss an upward glance at him and concentrate again on the sheets and files before them. Old man Minick would stand, balancing from heel to toe, and blowing out his breath a little. He looked a bit yellow and granulated and wavering there in the cool morning light of the big plate-glass windows. Or perhaps it was the contrast he presented with these slim, slick young salesmen. "Well, how are you today, Mr. Satterley? What's the good word?" Mr. Satterley would not glance up this time. "I'm pretty well. Can't complain." Good. "Anything I can do for you?" No, not a thing. Just dropped in to see my son a minute." "I see." Not unkindly. Then, as old man Minick still stood there, balancing, Mr. Satterley would glance up again, frowning a little. "Your son's desk is over there, I believe?" "Yes." George and Nettie had a bedtime conference about these visits, and Nettie told him gently that the bond house had objected to friends and relatives dropping in. It was against office rules. It had been so when she was employed there. Strictly business. She herself had gone there only once since her marriage. Well, that was all right. Business was like that nowadays. Rush and grab, and no time for anything. End of Chapter 2, Part 1.